Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me okay? Want to make sure that my audio is working. Great. So I'm Rachel. I am a senior qualitative research mentor here at Statistics Solutions. I've had a couple people confirm in the chat that they can hear me, so I don't need any more confirmation, but thank you for those who have. So I am like I said, senior qualitative research mentor here at Statistics Solutions, and I also do the APA editing as well. So I do a couple of things around here. And Statistics Solutions is really a full service dissertation consulting company. So we are here to help you at any stage of your dissertation. I also have Icetes with me today in the background running some tech support, making sure that everything is okay, and answering any questions that might come in during the webinar. So I'll do the webinar presentation. If you have questions at all, you can type them into the question and answer section, and Icetes will answer those during the webinar. And then any that are left over for me, she will leave in the questions section, and I will answer those at the end of the webinar. So we will have time for more question and answer at the end. Okay, so this is APA editing, how to avoid common mistakes, and then also a little bit about transitioning from APA 6 to APA 7, which I'm sure a lot of you are in the middle of doing right now with your dissertation. And, you know, in solidarity, I understand when I was writing my dissertation, my style guide changed as well. So it can be, it's a little bit of a curveball. It can be frustrating, but you can do it. Okay, so hopefully this will help out. So we'll cover a little bit of APA basics right now. These are some of the sort of unchanging aspects of APA, things that APA likes no matter what style guide you're using. So one of the things here pertains to active and passive voice. Now, I actually should back up really quickly and say, no matter what style guide you're using, you also want to make sure that you are using your own school's style guide as well, because it may be the case that they just say use APA 6 or use APA 7, but they might say use APA 6, but here are our own little quirks that we want you to follow as well. I know that Walden has some differences. I know that Capella has some differences. So, sort of when in doubt, check with what your school wants. I would say refer to that first, and then APA. Okay. So active and passive voice, APA prefers the use of active voice. And this is true for scholarly writing. What it means is that the focus is on the doer of an action. Okay. So a couple of examples here are for active voice, the researcher conducted the study in a controlled setting. So you don't want to say the study was conducted in a controlled setting. We don't know who conducted the study. Okay, that's passive voice. One thing to note is this doesn't have to do with tense, and I see this happen where people, I think, get active and passive voice confused with, past tense or present tense. And it's not that we're talking about tense. It's talking about who is the doer of the action and what are they doing. Okay. So you want to focus on who is active, who is doing something, who's doing the study, the researcher, or you, or I. Okay. And avoiding the passive voice when we can. Now, there are some schools that have their own little quirks, like I said, that don't want you to refer to the researcher, but also don't want you to refer to I. And so in this case, you're sort of left with a passive voice situation. Okay. So you see this a lot in chapter 3, also in chapter 4. Okay. So when you're referring to your own study and the different steps that you're taking in your own study. But you Also, we'll occasionally see some exceptions. So you might, instead of focusing on the doer or, you in the study, you might want to emphasize the recipient of the action or your participants. You make your participants the focus of the study. And this makes sense, right? Because in a lot of ways, your participants are the focus of the study. Okay. So these are really simple fixes. So if you are finding yourself writing in passive voice, make sure to include the doer of the action. So instead of the study was conducted in a controlled setting, think about who conducted the study and insert them. The researcher conducted the study in a controlled setting. Another example that I have heard that I think is pretty funny, but it works really well, is if you have a sentence that you can end with by zombies, you're probably writing in passive voice. So if you have a sentence that says the study was conducted in a controlled setting by zombies, okay, this is a passive voice. So you would want to change it around to, maybe the zombies are conducting the study, but it's probably the researcher. So it's just a little test there. Another sort of grammar and style concern related to APA is anthropomorphizing. And this is a really common occurrence that I see that you want to avoid. Okay. And so this is the act of attributing characteristics to inanimate objects and ideas, right? So this anthropomorphizing, an example of this would be if you said the study found the following results, okay? Or the article discussed the turnover rates for correctional officers. Well, a study can't do anything because it's not a person, it's a study. And an article, so a study can't find anything. Similarly, an article cannot discuss anything. A person can discuss something, right? But an article cannot. So this is anthropomorphizing, right? And the way to correct this then is to just be more specific and more precise in your language. The researcher found the following results. Okay, so it's not the study that found anything because the study can't do that because it's not a person. But the researcher found the following results. Or Smith, 2004, discussed the turnover rates for correctional officers. Okay, so we have a person in there and a person can do something. So making sure that we include the person there. Use of tense is a little bit tricky because it changes during the proposal stage and in your final manuscript. And so it can get tricky when you have to shift everything that was once in future tense to past tense. Okay, so typically in the proposal stage, so if you're writing sort of a more traditional 3-chapter intro, lit review, methodology proposal, as you're writing the proposal, you know, you will write it in future tense. This is all something that you are going to do. And yes, this should say the researcher will find. Okay, so there is a typo there and I apologize about that. But this is all written in future tense because you have not conducted the study yet. Okay, once that proposal is approved though, you're going to want to change everything to past tense. And this means that, you do have to really comb through. Okay, because I find even myself, it's so easy to miss instances of changing future tense to past tense. Okay, so once that proposal is approved, you've gotten through your defense, then change everything to past tense. Okay, and then you continue on with your results and conclusions chapter, so 4 and 5, presented in past tense. The other time that you want to use past tense is when you're referring to what other researchers have done. Okay, so for example, here we have Smith 2000 stated or found or confirmed anything that Smith did, anything that any other researcher did happened in the past. Okay, and so you talk about it in the past. So it wouldn't be Smith states or Smith finds or Smith confirms. It would be Smith stated or Smith found or Smith confirmed. Okay, so that's always past tense. So capitalization also follows just some pretty set rules. Okay. And some of these can get a little bit confusing, we want to capitalize when major words in titles and headings, including words of, this should say of 4 letters or more. Okay. And sometimes it doesn't look quite right necessarily. It might be how we write in, other papers, but all words that are 4 letters or more in titles and headings are capitalized. Okay. We capitalize journal titles. References to titles of sections within the same article or document. So if you're talking about your literature review in your discussion chapter, you would refer to it as in the literature review section, and you'd want to capitalize that. You're probably familiar with capitalization of proper nouns, adjectives, and nouns used as proper nouns, and trade names. If you are following a noun by a numeral or a letter, so if we have participant 1, or maybe you're lettering your participant, so it's participant A, then you would want to capitalize participant. The same with your research questions. So research question 1, research question 2, those would get capitalized. And then you'll also capitalize the titles of tests and inventories and questionnaires. But theories and models do not get capitalized. Okay. Now, if someone's name is attached to it, then you would capitalize that person's name, but you're not going to capitalize the theory or the model. So titles of tests, inventories, or questionnaires. There are also cases that seem a little counterintuitive where we don't capitalize. Okay, so one of these instances is in your reference list, in titles of books or articles, you won't capitalize all of the words. Okay, so you only capitalize the first word after a colon or an em dash, and a proper noun. Okay, so here we see this example of Henderson and Venkataraman. Strategic alignment, leveraging information technology for transforming organizations. And so you see that the article title here is not fully capitalized, only strategic and leveraging are capitalized. So the first word and then the first word after the colon. Okay. Journal articles though, journal titles are capitalized, as you can see. So IBM system journals, that gets capitalized, right? But the article title does not. Indented paragraph headings do not get capitalized. Names of laws, theories, models, statistical procedures, or hypotheses. Okay, so like I said, theories like cognitive behavioral therapy, that would not get capitalized, or shortened, inexact, or generic titles of tests are not capitalized. Abbreviations are fun because I think we have a tendency to, anytime we have something like Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, where there's like this known acronym, CDC, we want to use that. But it's not always the case that we should. Okay. So there is the question of overuse, and there's also the question of underuse. So for overuse, you kind of want to determine whether the space saved by using those abbreviations justifies the necessity to understand the meaning. Okay, so here in this example, the advantage of the LH was clear from the RT data, which reflected high FP and FN rates for the RH. Okay, so I read this and I have no idea what this is trying to tell me. Okay, it's specific knowledge, right? It's jargony for one thing, which makes it kind of obnoxious to begin with, but it would benefit the reader to understand what LH, RT, FP, FN, and RH mean. Okay, so here we have this case of we need to understand the meaning of this sentence. So using abbreviations is probably not the best idea here. There are also cases where we underuse abbreviations and acronyms. So the sort of rule of thumb is that if an abbreviation is used 3 times or less in a paper, it should be spelled out each time. Okay. But if it's used 4 or more times, then you can get away with an abbreviation. The first time that the phrase is used and the abbreviation or the acronym is used, then it needs to be written out completely. The acronym needs to be put into parentheses. And so the example, again, of the CDC, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, we'd write that out the first time that we use it. We put it in the acronym CDC, and we're going to use CDC everywhere that we see it for the rest of the document. Okay, we don't use Centers for Disease Control and Prevention again in the document once it is introduced with the acronym or with the abbreviation. Okay. The other area that I see trips people up is in United States versus US. So according to APA, you will only use the abbreviation US as an adjective. So if you're saying the US Navy or the US Army, okay, then you would use US as an abbreviation. Otherwise, when United States is used as a noun, you will spell that out. So number use, okay, is another one. And these are pretty, just when in doubt, you just go to your manual, right, and double check. So when you use numerals, and there are some exceptions here, but for numbers 10 and higher, you want to use the numeral, okay? If you're talking about numbers that represent time, dates, ages, scores and points on a scale, and exact sums of money, okay? So things like 2-year-olds, 5 years, item 1, okay? Then you're going to use numerals. The exception is if you're using words that approximate a number of days. So $1 million or 3 weeks or almost 2 days. Okay. Sorry, approximately 2 weeks or almost 2 days or $1 million, around $1 million. If it's an approximation, not an exact amount, then you want to write it out. Okay. You want to spell it out. In your abstract, use a numeral for every single number. Okay, always numerals in the abstract, even if it's 1, even if it looks funny, you always use a numeral in the abstract. When to spell it out, if a number begins a sentence, a title, or a text heading, you want to spell that number out. If it looks odd to have, maybe it's a long number that you have to spell out and it just kind of looks funny to you, see if you can't rewrite it so that you can just avoid spelling out that number. Okay, that's, I think, one really good solution here. Common fractions. Okay, you spell those out. And other words that are just sort of universally accepted as we spell these words out. Okay. So citations and references, these are the probably trickiest. This is one of the biggest issues that I see because there's a lot to pay attention to in your citations and your references. Okay. So in the text, and then your references at the end of your manuscript. Using in-text citations and references at the end are important because we do not want to plagiarize. Okay. All information that is not your own thought or idea must include a citation. You have to show where that thought or idea came from. Okay. Doing so strengthens your credibility as a researcher. Okay. And the flip side of this is that you will very easily reduce your credibility if you are poorly referencing other material. Okay. Um, it's unethical as well. It may get you kicked out of school. So there are a lot of reasons not to do this. Okay. So we have in-text citations and parenthetical in-text citations. This has changed a little bit from what we saw in APA 6. So for 1 to 2 authors in the text, so if it's part of the sentence, you would say author and Arthur, and then in parentheses, 2016, wrote X, Y, and Z. Okay. Parenthetical would be author and Arthur, comma, 2016, and that all goes in the parentheses. Okay. So the difference here too is that when it's part of the sentence in text, you use the word and. When it's a parenthetical citation in text, you use the ampersand. Okay. The 3 or more authors is where we see a change from APA 6. So if there are 3 or more authors in the first citation and every subsequent citation, you would write author et al., period, and then in parentheses, the year. So in this case, 2016 for our example. The parenthetical would be all in parentheses, author et al., period, comma, 2016. Okay. This is not the same as what those of you familiar with APA 6 saw, where in the first citation, you would write all of the authors. Okay, from the very first citation, if there are 3 or more, it is the first author et al. Your references list needs to be alphabetized. Okay. You also have to cross-check all of your references with your in-text citations. So everything that appears in your in-text citations has to appear in the references list. You also do not include anything in your references list that is not included as an in-text citation. And this might be different from some different style guides that you might be used to. Okay. So if it appears as an in-text citation, it appears in your references list. And if it appears in your references list, it's because there is an in-text citation for it. Okay. All online sources, and let's be honest, that's how a lot of us obtain our sources nowadays. You know, we don't often go into our school library and, you know, make copies of the journal article that we're looking for from the library. We access journals online. So you have to include retrieval information. A couple of sort of helpful hints here. Crossref database. This should say HTTP, so apologies for that. But crossref.org will help you locate retrieval information. So if somehow you've gotten to the end of your dissertation and you've got a couple of references, you can't remember where they came from, you can type in the information into the Crossref database and it will give you a DOI if that's available. Okay. DOI format now is a little bit different from APA 6. So here you use HTTP or HTTPS secure, and then the DOI. Okay, so there's only one option for formatting your DOI in the references list. And you also do not include retrieved from with the DOI. Okay, in fact, you don't include retrieved from in general anymore in APA 7 in your references list. So ReCite Works is another really, really helpful tool for making sure that you have a properly APA 7th edition formatted list of references and your in-text citations. And I use this really frequently because it is so helpful. And so you just create an account with your email. You just go to reciteworks.com, create an account, and then click, there's a big button, it says check now, and you just select that. You can upload whichever document with the references that you want to check. So it needs to be both the manuscript and the references. If you want to, cross-check the in-text citations with the references list. There's now a APA 7 option under check as. There's a drop down. It'll still provide you the option for APA 6 if you're still in APA 6, but now there's APA 7th as well. So it will run the check for you of your references in APA 7th edition. You'll select check and you'll run the reference check. And so you have different options here. It'll show you in-text citations, the reference list, and the annotated article. And you can see side-by-side viewing of your in-text and references list, right? Which is pretty cool for cross-referencing here. So for your in-text citations, when you get the ReCite Works report, okay, it'll generate a report and it'll do it just right in your internet browser. So the software will automatically identify errors, okay, and it'll identify errors in your in-text citations, it will identify errors in your reference list, and it will identify any discrepancies between the two. Okay, so it might tell you that you have a year mismatch. And if that's the case, it means that the year that you have used in your in-text citation does not match the year listed in the reference. There may be an author mismatch as well. In this case, you may have spelled an author wrong, so that the spelling between the in-text citation and the reference list does not match. Okay, so it'll let you know if there's a mismatch there. It will give you a style warning if you have used et al. Incorrectly. Okay, it'll just give you a little helpful hint that says, is this correct, so that you can double check. And it'll also give you a magnifying glass button that's really helpful that you can click on. It'll show you exactly where in the text the reference is used, so that then you can go to your document and find exactly where that error happened. Okay, so the references list, then it will identify any list errors related to author and date information. It doesn't check your titles of your articles, your books, your journals, anything like that. It will let you know, however, if you have a reference in your references list and you don't have an associated in-text citation, which is pretty helpful. Okay, so you can generally just remove those references, right? If it's in the reference list and it isn't found in your in-text citation, then it doesn't need to be in the references list, remember? But sometimes you will see a little asterisk under not found in document that says that there is a potential match. So you do want to check that in case it's just that you spelled something wrong or got the year wrong. Okay, just make sure that there is actually an in-text citation. It'll let you know if you are expecting a last name and then a comma. Okay, so there might be a missing initial. It just needs to be reviewed in this case. So you'd have last name, comma, space, first initial period, right? So if there's not a comma, then it'll let you know. It'll let you know if you need spacing. Okay, so let's say it's someone with an author with a first and a middle name. So let's say like Smith, comma, A, B. So in this case, then it would be Smith, comma, space, A period, space, B period. And if any of that's missing, then the ReCite Works report will let you know. It'll let you know if you're missing a comma after initials. It can link you to Google Scholar so that you can double check the spelling and the date in Google Scholar, which is pretty handy. And it'll also let you know if you have anything alphabetized incorrectly, if the order's off there. So that can be pretty handy as well. So those are some of the basics. In changing to APA 7, though, there are some changes. So I just want to highlight a couple of the major ones here. The first that's really different is your heading levels. These are totally different from what you would have seen in APA 6. Okay, so we do still have 5 levels. And again, you'll see different requirements for different schools. So these may be a little bit different from your school. Go with your school, what your school says. But APA 7 headings are different from APA 6. So your level 1 is going to be centered, bold-faced in title case, right? Which means every word 4 or more letters is capitalized. Okay. And then the text begins as a new paragraph. Level 2, the heading is flush left and it's bold-faced and it's also title case heading, and then the text begins a new paragraph. Okay, this is where we start to see some differences. Level 3 is flush left as well, and it's boldface and italics, and it's in title case heading, and the text begins a new paragraph. Okay, so again, the levels, it's increasing specificity. Okay, level 4 is indented, so it is not flush left. It is boldface. It is in title case. Okay, and the heading ends with a period. So before you probably saw that it's just in sentence case, but now it's in title case. So it's indented and bold in title case. So every word more than 4 letters is capitalized. It ends with a period, and then you move into the paragraph text on the same line, and it just continues as a regular paragraph. And level 5 then is going to be essentially the same, but in addition to being boldface, it's also italicized. Okay, so this is really to kind of streamline everything, but it does look different from APA 6, if you're familiar with APA 6. And it's taken me quite a while to make this adjustment, like, okay, which is the new 3, which is the new 4. So go easy on yourselves if you're having a hard time kind of making this adjustment. There are a lot of updated guidelines related to style and grammar and bias-free language. So those are definitely worth checking out in the APA 7 manual. A couple to pay attention to. APA is now totally fine with the singular they. So if in your study a person's gender is unknown or if it's not relevant, you can use they to refer to a single person. You can also use the singular they for a person who uses they as their personal pronoun. Okay, so a couple of situations where singular they is totally acceptable. There's also an increased emphasis on person first language, APAs for the social sciences. So we would put the person, not part of their identity, before anything else. So we would say a man with epilepsy rather than an epileptic man. Okay. An epileptic man is like saying that this is his whole identity, right? It's putting that aspect of his identity before the fact that he is a human being. Okay. A person. So a man with epilepsy or people living in poverty rather than the poor. Okay. Um, we really want to be specific as well. Okay. So, if you have more specific demographic information, you would want to say something more specific like Korean Americans versus Asian Americans, right? Asian Americans could come from any number of countries, right? So if you know the country and if that's relevant, then say the country, Korean Americans or cisgender men versus men. Okay. So we want to be specific and we want to be bias free in our writing. Tables and figures are also a little bit different now. The main thing is that figure numbers and titles are presented the same as table titles and names. Okay. Or sorry, numbers and titles. So have an example here of a title. Okay. And the table number and the table title are above it. Okay. So table 1, bolded, 1 space, and then not boldface, but italicized, you have the table title. Okay. This is also how the figure captioning works now. So whether it's a table or whether it's a figure, the number is going to be in boldface. So figure 1, table 1, 1 space, and then 1 space in between, and then italicized is going to be the table or the figure title. Okay, so again, it's just, it's more of a visual thing. It is more streamlined, right? But it is a little bit different for those of you who are maybe familiar with the figure number and title being placed at the bottom of the figure. Okay, so numbers and titles are presented the same way for tables and figures. So for in-text citations and references list, like I mentioned earlier, there are some differences here, and I've touched on these a little bit already, but any source with 3 or more authors for your in-text citations uses et al, beginning with the first use. So the only exception to this would be if you have 2 different papers with the same first listed authors that have the same name. Okay. And so you need to differentiate. So maybe you have an article that is Smith, Brown, and Johnson. Okay. And you have another one that is Smith, Brown, and Smith. Okay. So if you start off with Smith et al. For Smith, Brown, and Johnson, that's going to be different, right? But not apparently different to the reader. If you use Smith et al. For what was the other one? Smith, Brown, and Smith. Okay. So if it's going to cause confusion and you need to differentiate, then you can write out 3 or more authors using, in the first use. The references list also looks a little bit different. Before, you did not have to include all authors. Okay. But now you were going to include all authors up to 20 authors in your reference list entry. Yes, up to 20. Okay. This probably won't happen too often, but it might. So you'll list all of those. No getting around it. Okay. There's also the option to include hyperlinks for electronic sources. So DOIs and URLs can be presented as hyperlinks. And you also, like I alluded to earlier, will not use a retrieved from in your references list anymore. And the exception is when you have included a retrieval date, right? And so you use the retrieval date if a web page or a website is likely to if the content is likely to change. And so you want to be able to say, you know, I accessed it on, you know, February 8th of 2021, so that it's clear that on this date, this was the content on this web page, you know, but that might change. And so then you would include the retrieval date, and you would also include the retrieved from in that case, but otherwise you don't use retrieved from. And so just a couple of other little kind of helpful hints, if I can impart them. No matter what formatting or style guide you're using, it is absolutely worth your time to keep up with it from the very beginning. Okay. Having gone through this with both a thesis and a doctoral dissertation, I can tell you that probably the least fun thing to do is getting over the hurdle of having your complete manuscript and having to go back and format everything. So it might feel like it takes more time to keep up with it along the way, but I promise it pays off. And even if they switch style guides on you halfway through, it'll still make it that much easier. Okay. It is also worthwhile to keep a running list of references and regularly check those against your in-text citations. Okay. This is the other thing, you know, your final hurdle, you don't want it to be having to go back and locate information for every single reference you used in your dissertation. That is awful. That's its own special circle of hell. Okay. Keep a running list going from the very beginning. Okay. I'm also going to make a plug for citation managers. Not everyone agrees with me, and that is totally fine. Okay. People don't have to agree with me, but they are really, really helpful. They are not perfect. Okay, so you can set a citation manager to manage all of your in-text citations and to generate your list of references based on your in-text citation. And you can set it to do that in whatever style guide you want. Okay, but they're not perfect. You will still have to go through and double check everything to make sure that the program hasn't made any errors. Okay, but they're called managers for a reason, right? They manage your references and your citations so that you don't have to. Some of them have a bit of a learning curve, but I firmly believe it's worth it to learn how to use them. There are so many different programs available now, but I think they can be really helpful. It's just sort of one less thing that you have to worry about, you know, and everybody wants that when they're working on their dissertation, right? And then keep a copy of your manual nearby. You don't have to memorize anything in that manual. You'll start to, you know, as you're working through your dissertation. But, you know, it's a reference manual, so it's there to be referred to. It's not there to be memorized. Okay. It's worth the investment. It doesn't cost a lot, right? And you can find most everything is available online, but just know that there are a ton of resources out there for APA and APA 7 that can help you out with even the sort of, you know, strangest questions you might have related to APA. So we'll do some question and answers now, but I do just want to highlight again, you know, Statistics Solutions and what we do, which is full service dissertation consulting. So, you know, anywhere from topic development to your discussion chapter, your final chapter of your dissertation, we are here for you. We provide support through any stage. We do provide a complimentary 30-minute consultation during business hours, so Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. That's Eastern time in the United States. Okay. Our contact information is here. You can contact us at info@statisticsolutions.com, or you can give us a call to get your complimentary 30-minute consultation scheduled. And what we do really during the consultation is just talk a little bit more about your own unique dissertation needs and how we can help out. Find out more about your project, what particular areas you're having trouble with, areas of concern, so that we can really tailor our services to what you need to help you finish in a timely manner. Okay. So let me open up the questions. Let's see. Question about what about capitalization when referring to chapters, as in chapter 2? Yes. So you would capitalize chapter in that case, because remember, if there's a numeral that comes after it, then you'll capitalize that word. ReCite Works is a free resource. Yes. Thank goodness. Thank goodness it's free, because I use it all the time. So ReCite Works is really pretty awesome for use. And yes, it is free. Let's get a couple of these cleared here. Other question, aren't you supposed to only capitalize the first letter of a journal article, even with the subtitle after the semicolon of the original or first subject title? Are you supposed to only capitalize the first letter? So you'd capitalize the first letter of a journal article, even with the subtitle, and then after the semicolon, you would also capitalize the first word after that. Okay, are there other questions that I can answer this afternoon? Okay, I don't see other questions coming in. So I hope that this was helpful for all of you. I hope that you got something out of this. I appreciate you attending today. Wish you a very happy Monday. And like I said, if I can leave you with one thing, keep up with your formatting from the beginning. I promise, promise. It's worth it. It's so worth it. And let us know how we can help you out. Go ahead and get in touch so that we can talk more about what kind of help you need to get you through. Thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.